check out Heavy Hitter. I mean, check them out. They're sick. They're kind of like a old school, almost like a MySpace deathcore, but just it's like straight up, beat down, heavy, no operatic stuff, no strings, just guitars, blast beats, and brutal vocals. Dude, Organectomy. Are you kidding me? Though I feel like Organectomy was like one of the kind of original hype slam bands that kind of came out. I mean, what, almost 10 years ago now? Organectomy is brutal. It's basically like deathcore on steroids. Mental Cruelty. I think Mental Cruelty are an amazing example of what modern deathcore is, where you have obvious musicianship, very talented dudes. They're putting their melody and their kind of musical education and ability on display. At the same time, you're still going to get very brutal, very primitive aspects, and I think they blend them nicely. And an insane vocalist. The dude's awesome. I've been a fan of Cryptopsy, got to be almost 20 years now, and I always revered Canadian death metal. The Canadian death metal or Canadian deathcore, kind of the scenes blended, was how much more talented you guys were. You could be brutal, you could be fast and nasty, which, you know, we could do down in the States, but then you had this like almost like classic musicianship. You know what I mean? I felt like it was almost like a more sophisticated version of kind of, you know, like American death metal.
Hey, what's up, Vox&Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. I hope that you had a great week. I most certainly did. This Vox&Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and they put on a bunch of amazing gigs in Montreal all year long. If you are ever in Montreal and you would like to see a great metal show, well, trust me when I say that Heavy Montreal will have you covered. I'm beyond stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just want to talk to you about Cryptopsy's upcoming tour. That's right, I'm talking about the Necromanteum Part II tour. We are hitting the road next week, people, at this point. It's coming up very soon. The Necromanteum Part II tour features performances by Carnifex, us in Cryptopsy, Mental Cruelty, Organectomy, and Heavy Hitter. This tour kicks off on October 4th in Pomona, California, and it runs all up that west coast, and then we go all across Canada, which is something that we have not done in the past 10 years. That's right, we're hitting Alberta, we're hitting Saskatchewan, we're hitting Manitoba, we're back in Ontario, then we make our way back down south, and this tour will wrap up on November 3rd in Reno, Nevada. I am beyond stoked to be back on tour, and you should definitely come and hang out with me. You can grab your tickets at voxandhops.com/Carnifex. Do it, people. Come out and hang out with me on the Necromanteum Part II tour. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be joined by Scott Lewis of Carnifex. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox&Hops, episode number 470.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm very stoked to be with Scott Ian Lewis of Carnifex. Scott, I love doing this. You are the final slew of interviews that I'm doing to promote the Necromanteum Part II tour. I've hung out with every single band leading up to this tour. You are the final one. The tour starts next week at this point. We are recording this in advance, as obvious, because that's how we do things, because we're busy before we go on tour. I'm very happy to do this because then we've never met. We've had a few phone calls, we've exchanged some emails, some texts for the past few months, but we've actually never hung out. So I like to break the ice, to hang out with the people I'm going to go on tour with, to get to know them before we live together for a month on a bus, to hang out, talk about what's going to go on this tour, so that everyone get a sense of the vibe of what they can expect aside from just a killer package and a killer show. Long intro just to say, Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I actually love that intro. That was a great intro.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very happy to be doing this. It's such a cool thing to use the podcast as this medium to really get to know someone that I'm actually, we're gonna wake up and be in the same tube together for
That's true.
30 plus days. We're gonna be living in close proximity. And it's cool to, we end up becoming most of the time when I'm on tour with people, and I'm sure it's the same for you. You become very close with people as friendship wise develops from day by day, and you get to know people. And here we are, we'll get to know each other a little bit before that, and that makes me happy. We'll already have gotten through some little awkward first conversations about, like, what do you like and this, that, and we're gonna, figure out how to hang out, and that makes me happy. What are you drinking? It's Vox and Hops. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives and music while sharing craft beers on my side. What are you going to be drinking on your side tonight, Scott?
Tonight I'm drinking a margarita.
Oh, snap. Oh, see, no,
I know,
we will
so
get along
maybe
there.
that's
No,
my
I like that.
California showing, maybe.
Oh, I like that. Okay, what do you put in your margarita?
Uh, Tequila? Yeah, it's, tequila, lime juice, sometimes like a splash of Sprite just to kind of give it kind of a little crispness, kind of a little 'cause Sprite's kind of refreshing.
Hell yeah.
And it like kills the alcohol taste,
The
so it's not like
tequila
bitter.
slap in the face there.
Tequila can be a slap if you get a little heavy-handed with it. So, but here's something funny, man. I wasn't a drinker for a long time. I was straight edge for 16
Oh,
years.
really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, from '04 to 2020.
Oh,
Long time.
and then the
Yes,
pandemic.
yeah, the pandemic got me. I couldn't white knuckle life anymore. But yeah, it was 16 years I was straight edge. So the prodigal son returns.
Well, we do enjoy margaritas cryptopsy on days off. It tends to be at an Applebee's for some horrible reason.
Right? Or
We
like a Red Lobster.
Yeah, sometimes. Chris can eat there because he's a vegetarian, and I won't talk about Chris, but I'll talk about myself. I'm a vegan, so Red Lobster isn't the best option for me, but Applebee's tends to have some options. So I have enjoyed a few margaritas on days off, and we do have some days off on this tour, which is appreciated. So
Yeah.
thank you for planning it ahead that way, so that we can get some recuperation
I gotta thank the
hypothetically.
agent on that one. That's I mean we had a great agent. I love the guy. He does a great job, and he knows that, after, darn near 20 years on the road, a day off isn't the worst thing.
It feels good, and it's something that you look
Yes.
forward to, and then you have it. You can do some laundry. You can drink a
Roadie Friday.
margarita. Yeah, yes, I
Dude,
love. Yeah, I
Roadie
love.
Friday.
It makes me so happy to have fresh laundry on tour. It's the best feeling in the
Oh
world.
man. It's a good feeling that when you finish that show and you have a day off the next day, like you've never felt more free.
It's true, but then you make bad decisions. But
Well,
on my
you're
side,
free to make bad decisions.
yeah, but then sometimes they trickle into the next day from experience. This is a very cool beer. It's actually the Haze Lords beer. About a month ago, I put on an IPA competition called Vox&Hops Haze Wars, where I put
Wow.
5 breweries head to head to
Dang.
create their best IPA using Yakima Chief Hops, because Yakima Chief Hops sponsored the whole project where they gave all the breweries all their hops for free. Me and Luke Beaulieu from Yakima Chief Hops chose their NZ hop line. Yakima Chief Hops is a huge hop producer in the States. From the Yakima Valley, and they distribute hops across the globe. And they have a bunch of farms in New Zealand, their NZ line, because New Zealand hops are super hot right now in the IPA game. And
Wow.
we threw 3 hop options at these breweries, and they had to make their best IPA. This one had Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, and Riawaka. And this one right here was the winner of the Vox&Hops Haze Wars 2024. It's from Pub Brewskey. They called it Raid 6.5% IPA. I'm going to crack this.
Awesome.
So you waited many, many years. Do you remember that first, I'm going to have a beer, I'm going to have a drink in 2020?
Uh, you know, I don't know if I do. I'm trying to think here. Oh, actually, yes, I do. And it's actually kind of funny because it wasn't with anything spectacular. I'm not taking a shot at the brand because they're cool and they've been cool enough. Cheers. Um, maybe you recall Blackcraft, they were doing a
Yeah.
whiskey for a while. Do you remember
Okay. Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And so we ended up with a few bottles from something and some type of, promotion. And that was what I drank first. I was like, we had this random bottle of Blackcraft, like clear whiskey, like it looked like vodka or tequila. It wasn't like a
Wow.
brown
Okay.
whiskey.
That's a big step though,
And
like being straight edge for 16 years and jumping straight to heavy whiskey.
but if you think about it, was there any other way? You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
You're
come
not going to
on,
do
man.
a Bud Light or a...
Nah, that wasn't gonna. I probably wouldn't even have felt that. But
That's
hey, I
awesome.
will say, we got some beer drinkers in the band, Fred and Neil. Those dudes can drink some beers.
Hell yes.
And Neil's more kind of a classic beer guy, although he'll definitely try anything local. But Fred is king of the local beers. Like even, we put the rider together for the tour and, everybody gets to stay. And Fred's say is always 6-pack of the local IPA,
Oh, good.
so
Okay. Well, me and Fred are going to
so
hang out, and Fred actually came
he's
out.
putting in work.
Fred came out last September on the Cryptopsy tour and actually brought me some beer. Now that you're mentioning it, I remember him doing so when we came through Mesa.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he lives in
Yeah.
Phoenix. He moved out to Phoenix. Him and his girl bought a house out there back in 2019. And yeah, he's like a local
Good.
he's a beer connoisseur.
Good.
Like
He's right up my alley.
so what?
We're gonna hang out. And I'll put it out there right now that I am exchanging a guest list spot at all of these shows, except for a few, because shows like Montreal and other shows, the guest lists are just shot already. In exchange for craft beer, I'm gonna be doing this. So people listening to this, check out for that post and secure your spot. Bring us some good craft beers, and me and Fred and other people on the bus will enjoy them while you get to come to the show for free.
I mean, that's a good deal right there.
And it's a good deal for all of us.
Right. Everyone wins in that situation.
From this clear whiskey, black craft whiskey to margaritas, you never got into the beer game.
Not really. And it's probably a bit strange because I live in San Diego, which is like a
Beer mecca,
huge, right, it's
crazy.
a beer
Yeah.
mecca. Um, okay, I guess that's like the intersection of I still try to pretend that I eat healthy and I try to be like a healthy person because I'm always thinking like, when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm in my mid 40s, like I want to be healthy and be able to put on a great show and still have good cardio and all this stuff. And so I try to limit the calories and limit the carbs and all that junk.
You
Um,
are right that this is a bunch of empty nothing, except for delicious
right.
beer.
So what do? Go clear liquor, man. Clear liquor, no
You're
calories.
wise. You're wise.
Uh,
I might have to take a page from your book and think about future Matt a bit
well,
more.
I don't know if it's the best advice, but it's what I'm running on right now.
I'd love to hear about the soundtrack of your youth. This is a classic Vox and Hops question here. I'd like to hear what was playing on the radio when you were growing up. What did your parents or guardians listen to when you were not in control of the radio? What did they listen to?
Okay, so this is a great question because it did inform a lot of my journey as a musician. So when I was really young, so you're talking, you know, 5 to 12, right? That where you have no autonomy, you're just whatever's happening, you're a part of it. My parents are a little bit older. They had me when they were older, when they were in their, late 30s, early 40s. And so they always listened to like rock from the 60s.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
it was Jim uh like the Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, um the Doors, the Beatles, Elvis, like the real classic. Whenever you think like true like classic rock, Roy Orbison, a lot of like very classic rock. So rock from the 50s and 60s. And, my dad would tell me stories about when he saw Led Zeppelin live in, 1970, whatever, or when he saw Jimi Hendrix live at the Shrine in Los Angeles. Because, my family and my young life, I grew up in Los Angeles. We ultimately moved to San Diego, but I was born up there, lived up there for many years. And so I would listen to what they would listen to. So it was a lot of the early rock, which I didn't mind, and I think maybe my sort of ear, uh, for lack of a better term, for songwriting, maybe came from listening to Elvis and listening to the Beatles and listening to Zeppelin and the Doors and Hendrix when I was in those very formative years. It was just always on in the background, and I kind of subconsciously soaked it up. And okay, so then let's say now I'm, 10, 11, 12. I have an older sister. My sister is almost 6 years older than me. So she's, a bit older than me. And I always really looked up to her and thought what she was doing was very cool because, I was so much younger. It was very, it was kind of mysterious and exciting. She was always doing things and going places that I couldn't go or didn't
Mm-hmm.
do. And so she started listening to grunge. This is like 95,
99. Yeah.
96,
Yeah.
right? Later 90s. So she's listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Stone Temple Pilots and Smashing Pumpkins as we get closer to 2000, and Bush and who else is out there, man? Like um just kind of all those bands that were Deftones that were in the late 90s, mid late 90s. And because I really, thought my older sister was cool, because she was, she's like cool older sister, I really started gravitating towards grunge. And then she really loved Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. And that was where I sort of took up the torch. So what, 97, 98, I'm introduced to Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails and like White Zombie, like kind of the,
Yes.
I guess,
Industrial. Yeah.
mall goth,
Yeah.
right? For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
We didn't know much back then, right? So if it was, mall goth was like cool. If you could go to the mall and buy the shirt, that was cool,
But it
and
wasn't like nowadays where everything is exposed. It was like we had just a tiny glimpse of what was out there.
it was, yeah. It was very even though it was on MTV and it was on the radio, it kind of felt underground and still not too mainstream.
Hmm.
They would only play like a Nine Inch Nails or a White Zombie or a Manson video. Well, Manson kind of broke out, but a lot of it was like later. If you're watching MTV, you know, generally, Manson wasn't like on TRL,
Yet.
uh,
Yeah.
so it still felt kind of out of the mainstream a little bit. Okay, so from there, I get into like the goth thing of Nine Inch Nails and Manson and White Zombie and all that. And that's when I start meeting like the alt metal and goth metal kids at school. And then that's when I get introduced to Cradle of Filth.
Ooh,
And so Cradle of
that's
Filth,
that's an easy transition. That yeah.
right. And that was 98, 99 when they had put out kind of that holy trilogy of Dusk and Her Embrace, Cruelty and the Beast, and Midian, which that's a hell of a run right there. I know Cradle's a bit decisive these days. Like some people are don't really acknowledge them as like a legit metal band or brutal
No, no,
metal,
no, no.
which
And
I can understand. But
no,
you're
no, they're,
talking
they're still intense, and his vocals are
right.
insane.
Exactly. And that's a great point. So think about 25 years ago, right? 99. But if you can even imagine such a draconian time. 1999, and you're listening to, Cruelty and the Beast and Midian, where it's like these, Cruelty had like 8-minute epic like black metal operas.
Hmm.
And it's blast beats, it's highs, it's lows, and it was really extreme. And out there for the time. They put that EP out, From the Cradle to Enslave, which was like, it was pretty huge, for the time. And that was really when now I found extreme metal. I found bands that growl and scream and have blast beats.
And the
And once I found,
theatrics, though. The theatrics, there was
and
the
right, the
goth
black metal
elements
theatrics.
kept
Yeah, yeah.
expanding into
So
that too.
what? Yeah. So once I found Cradle, then I found Dimmable Gear, which they put out. Was it Spiritual Black Dimensions,
Mm.
which that record is still awesome. Awesome. It's a great album. And so, you find, Dimmu, and then you find Emperor and Satyricon, and man, who else? You go back and you find all the older black metal records, right? Mayhem, Burzum, uh, what part, Celtic Frost, and then you find death metal. So then I found Cannibal, Fetus, and
Just hunting
Incantation,
more and more extreme.
Rotting Christ, Immolation, just kind of all those, Vader, all those early death and black metal bands of the late 90s. Not all of them made it into the 2000s or made it through the 2000s, but for the time when you had to go to a record store and basically their death and black metal section was about, 6 records, you would just get everything there. You kind of didn't care. If it had a gnarly logo and like some type of, grim or brutal album cover, good enough. You're done. I'll take it.
The
You know,
chances that we took back in the day, and then the chances that we gave that record before we actually liked it and or dismissed it was much more than now.
because it's all you had. It's like if you're kind of on this, obsession with, brutal metal, death and black metal, you got about 10 or 15 records you can get your hands on.
True. And it
And
was that one guy that worked at the store that was making these orders, right? So thanks to
right,
whoever that guy
there
was
wasn't
in all of our
much.
lives.
There wasn't much. There was one store in where I live. It was called Inner World was the name of this store. And they would sell like weed pipes.
Really? Oh,
They had
wow.
a sex shop in the back. So you could get,
It's not even
whatever
like
sex
a
toys you
mainstream
want.
record store at all. I was expecting you going into
Oh no.
we had, what do we have up here? I don't even remember what we had. HMV, which doesn't exist anymore, but it still
No, no,
exists
no.
somewhere in the world, but they
It
sell
was like a
DVDs now.
sketchy head shop
Wow.
that they sold sex toys. They had a record section, like Rasta weed culture stuff. So you get like a hoodie with like a weed leaf on it, right? Very
Just
edgy.
everything to piss off your parents.
Yeah, and then they had like, for whatever reason, they had this glass case that had like 50 knives in it. So you could buy a
Yes.
knife.
See, that would have got me back in the day. That was my favorite thing about going to Canadian Tire with my dad, was to look at the knives for some reason.
It was like the most random store. Like someone's like, yeah, let's get a sex toy, a knife, a death metal record, and like a Rasta hacky sack. That's our store.
It's basically Timu, but back then.
But this is like San Diego, like a beach town,
Sick.
kind of like maybe like disgruntled hippie
Mm.
was kind of the vibe they were going for.
So that's an awesome adventure throughout your musical upbringing that
Yeah.
leads you all to you opening your mouth and making sounds with it. At what point did you start experimenting with your voice and discovering that you were actually good at it?
So the way I discovered I was a good vocalist was I discovered I was a bad musician.
Yeah,
So
that happens.
I tried to be a guitarist. Didn't go so well. I remember the very first show I ever played. So this is maybe 2001, maybe it's
Wow.
even 2000. It was a very long time ago. I was young. I was a guitarist. We had 2 guitars. I was the guitarist and the vocalist. And basically, my hand like froze.
Out of fear,
I
or like you had a cramp?
all of the above. It was it was fear, it was anxiety, it was anticipation, and we were like opening a show for other bands that were actually cool. And we were the very first band, and there was maybe, I don't know, 15 people watching us. Everyone else was outside. That's how it goes when you're opening. And for whatever reason, I just kind of froze, like my motor skills froze, but my voice was still good. Like I didn't forget the lyrics, and like I felt okay on my voice for the time, but my hand like seized up on me. I like couldn't play the riffs. So that was kind of the beginning and the end of trying to be a guitarist and a vocalist. Um, and then I just was the vocalist in that particular band. And then in the band I was in afterwards, I was gonna try to be the drummer for some reason.
Really? That's a
Yes.
strange leap then.
I think it was because in this other band that we kind of put together it was a vocalist from another band that was already sort of cool or popular. So he was kind of known as like a good vocalist, this guy named Matt. And then our guitarist, this guy named Chuck, he was actually like a really good guitarist. So I just wanted to like, we needed a drummer. And so
And
it
you
was like,
wanted to be
well,
in that band. Yeah.
right. It's like, how do we make this work? It's like, well, we
Hmm.
got everybody but a drummer. And it was like, well, we don't need two vocalists, but we need a drummer. So I'll just be the drummer because he's already kind of popular and established in the local scene. So I'll just be the drummer. So I was the drummer in that band for, I guess, like a year. And we tried to, do some shows, and it kind of went okay. We played some decent shows. But then that band sort of just, you know, dissolved, I guess. And I kind of gave up on music for about a year. And then I met Sean, the drummer for Carnifex, in 2005, and we started Carnifex, and we had our first band practice August 25th of 2005.
Wow. So
Yeah, that was.
what as you playing drums? Because I'm not a drummer, and when I'm
you know
tracking stuff, at sometimes, my timing's not the best, and it takes some time. I'm okay when I'm practice and I'm on tour and I know this, but in the studio, Chris can get frustrated with me. What have you learned? What came from those skills of being a drummer and then applying it to being a vocalist?
Well, I really rely on the drums.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not exactly. I don't know that I've had this conversation with other vocalists as far as like, okay, hey, you're on stage, the song's going, what are you tuning into? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Or is
Yeah,
it the riff? Is it the click? Is it the kick? Is it the snare? What exactly what are you following? What's your sort of North Star? And for me, it's the drums.
really.
And
Oh, so that
oh
is
yeah,
odd. Yeah, for me, that's odd. Yeah.
oh dude, it's the snare. Like
Mm.
the snare is like it's my metronome. And I don't really go with the kick because you can kind of get, maybe they're doing a pattern or
Hmm.
a double or a single, or kind of undulating between the two. But the snare, that thing's
You
always
can
on the line.
hear, and you can hear the snare too.
That's true. You can't hear the snare. And so I really tune into the drums, and like obviously you need to hear the riff to kind of reference
Hmm.
where you are in the riff, as far as how long is this measure, where is he in the measure. But man, I'm living on the drums.
That's super interesting. So I'd
Yeah.
never
So
thought of, but flow is flow. So sometimes he has some jazzy liberties, as we call them. He gets a bit too jazzy.
yeah, I'll say that Sean, I wouldn't say Sean's jazzy. He's very a bit mechanical, which I
It helps in
appreciate.
that instance.
And
Yeah.
he's Joey Jordison was a major influence to him. So he has like the Jordison fills, which you really hear on our early records. He's brought a lot more of his own style and his own originality into
It
his
comes with
playing.
time. That's you just
Right.
developing as a musician, finding your own
Absolutely.
voice, your own identity.
100%, 100%. And in the early days, he was very Jordison influenced, and so he would have kind of the wild fills. But his timing is still, he's pretty good with the timing. He'll hit that one, all the time. And he's on the ears. He's got the
Hmm.
click. So he's kind of my click,
That's cool. That's really, really, really cool. I had never thought and or heard of people doing that. So that's awesome. Um, your voice, developing your voice more than just starting it. How have you enriched it? What steps did you take to keep it healthy? When you were younger, it takes time for us to really find our own identity, as you mentioned, with drumming
Yeah.
and stuff. So,
It was an interesting journey because I, not to date myself, but when I was started doing vocals, obviously there's no vocal tutorials or anything
nothing.
like
There was
that.
nothing. There was the zen of screaming, and that was it.
I don't even know if there was Zen of Screaming.
Hmm.
I don't exactly know when Zen of Screaming
Maybe
started, but I think
2003 to 5 type thing is what I want to think.
okay, so right around when the time Carnifex started, but I think my first band was in 2000, right in there. I, I
Hmm.
was I was like 16, so 2000. Um, and there's nothing to reference at that point other than you can put on a record and just sort of try to emulate it.
Hmm.
Good luck, figure it out. But here's what the guy sounds like. So see if you can sound like that. Um, so I would listen back then. I was listening to obviously Cradle, Demu. I had found Zayo, which
Hmm.
actually played in San Diego, kind of, or SoCal, like fairly frequently. Which you know, Demu and Cradle and Emperor and Satyricon and Immortal, kind of all these other bands, they weren't really, right? So you have the bands you really appreciated like from afar, like through their records, but then you had the bands that were like would actually come to town, which were kind of a different batch. It'd be like a strange group like 6 Feet Under, um, when they were on their first record, Brain Drill.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you remember going way back. You remember that band Crisis?
It sounds familiar, yeah.
So they had a female vocalist, and at the time, 2000, there was like zero female
Hmm.
vocalists in metal. I think this may have even predated Angela and Arch Enemy.
Oh wow,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, you check this band out. They're called Crisis,
Crisis.
and their singer, her name was Karen, and she had these like super long dreads, and she'd do these gnarly hair whips. She was like a kind of crust punk chick, and she had like a gnarly death growl, and the
Sick.
band was called Crisis, and they were on tour a lot.
You're like, how is she doing this? How can I do this? If she can do this, I can do this.
Yeah, and she was like this kind of like crust punk chick that was doing death metal,
Super
which
sick.
when you're 16, you're like,
This is next
where do I
level.
find
Yeah.
this woman? You know what I mean? She seemed, she was totally badass. And so you kind of get this like weird, I remember seeing Incantation.
Mm.
Uh, I'm trying to think who else. I remember seeing Christian. Dude, I remember seeing Lamb of God when they were one of four
Yeah. Wow.
on
Yeah.
a Cannibal Corpse tour.
That's
One of
crazy. Lamb of God
Yes, I
on
think it
Cannibal
was
Corpse.
fall of
That's
2000.
wow.
Yeah, it was actually a really sick lineup. It was it was Cannibal, Jimmy Gear, Christian, Lamb of God.
Wow.
Yeah. It was at
Unthinkable nowadays. Yeah.
yeah, it was at the Palace up in Hollywood, which is not there anymore. And I think it was fall of 2000, like November of 2000. I'm sure you can find the tour online
That's sick. That's
somewhere. But
super,
yeah,
super sick.
it was back before Randy was sober.
Mm.
And I just remember he had a Heineken and a cigarette like in
Hmm.
one hand, like he's holding this beer and a cigarette, and he
And
had
the
the
mic
mic
in the end.
in the other the whole time.
Hell
Scream, take
yes.
a drink. And he was trashed. You could tell he was trash. He jumped
He
into the
still
crowd.
nailed it. Yeah, yeah. Great
This
frontman. Yeah.
yeah, it was like back in 2000 when you could smoke in a venue and smoke on stage, nobody cared.
He would even smoke when he wasn't supposed to. But
Yeah, now you probably get banned for life from Live Nation if
true.
you say that.
100%. Yes. Yes. Totally. Which we don't want
Or
to do. Yeah.
right, or like throw glass into like a glass bottle into the crowd,
Hmm.
you'd be done.
Hmm.
But this is a long time ago, and so yeah, those were kind of my super formative memories of the metal
So just
scene.
you screaming along to these CDs
Yeah,
and finding your own voice and finding what works for you, and
yeah,
then going into a jam room and then bringing it out there.
yeah. Just I think doing practice like rehearsal with a band I think is underrated, and which is kind of weird because I know a lot of yeah, new younger vocalists now they're very proficient, like their technique is on
So
lock.
good.
They know kind of how to do everything and be so relaxed and chill about it, which I envy that to some degree, but I don't, and it's maybe it's a question for those guys, but like the catharsis or the purge of
Mm.
like
Letting it all
screaming
go. Yeah.
and sweating and being like hot and out of breath and tired. There's something to that
Hmm.
that I think creates kind of the whole experience of being a vocalist and being on your journey. Like, yes, a good vocal performance is key, of course, no question. But you're also an artist, right? And as an artist, you have to go through your arc and go through your evolution, and you have to feel something. You have to feel, catalyst, change, something, a purge. And so while I absolutely appreciate and respect the sort of surgical and sterile um, approach where they get this great product, I think there's kind of there's something to suffering too. Like you need to blow your voice out
Like
at least once,
Corey, early
right?
Corey Taylor records where you could hear him
Right.
screaming, and it's like, there's no way this is good for him.
No, but that's like,
But
I think
it gives you
that's
goosebumps.
part of it.
It gives you
That's got to
goosebumps.
be
Yeah.
part of the journey.
Yeah. It's like that
It's
horror movie Scream, these people that can do it, and just it
yeah.
gets you. The emotional drive of these primal screams.
Right. And I think it too, it plays into your live performance. I mean, I know that there's kind of a shift in the focus of kind of a modern day vocalist, right? It's like, what you can do in a video versus, can you go on tour 300 days out of the year for 10 years? Those are two completely different animals. They
Totally.
couldn't be more different.
I'm building a new project now where it's like really like a studio thing, and I was tracking some vocal thing the other day, and I looked at him, I'm like, we're never gonna play this live, right? And I was like, okay, let's try something crazy then. Because I probably could do it, but it was like,
But even that mindset is because sometimes like talking to the dudes, they'll be like, I don't know if I could pull this off live. And I'm just like, dude,
you'll
you
do it.
sound like a boomer right now. Okay. Put it on the record and we'll figure it out.
Yes,
Okay.
we'll find a way.
We'll find a way or we won't play the song. Like, but just put it on the record, dude. Nobody is asking that question but you. Okay.
True.
Just make the record and we'll figure it out after the fact.
As musicians, we definitely live in our heads a lot more than we need to.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100% live in my head. Definitely.
As someone who's writing
Definitely.
lyrics right now for the next record, it's like, is it good enough? Is it these things that we put ourselves through before
Yeah.
getting even into the studio, before even presenting it to our bandmates.
Yeah. That's true.
We are going on tour. The Necromanteum Part II tour is coming up real soon. I am excited about this, and I want to talk a lot about it. I want to talk about building a tour. Let's start with that. You basically handpicked this tour, which is something that excites me very, very much. Talk to me about having a great agent and whoever else is involved in this, and just allowing you to basically just handpick tours. I think that's exciting.
Yeah. So, okay. That's a great question. And stop me if I'm long-winded because I can definitely blab. So I've been managing Carnifex since 2018.
Wow. Okay.
And that wasn't necessarily the plan. It's kind of just what happened. We, had to move on from our previous manager for business related reasons. And we had planned on finding a new manager and getting new management, just kind of doing what you would assume. You leave one guy and you replace him with another guy, but then that didn't really happen right away. Combined with we were kind of in a place in our career back in 2018 and 2019 where things were going well, and so we were just sort of getting work and getting offers and being able to put together good tours kind of without a manager. It was just sort of coming to us. And we have a great agent. We've had our agent since what is it, 2014? So we've had our agent for
10
quite a
years
long
now.
time. Yeah, 10 years. And then interesting enough is we worked together even prior to that, back in the MySpace days. When he had like a MySpace booking agency.
Mm.
This is way back in like 06, 07, 08, like super early on, when it wasn't kind of as formal with agents and managers back then, especially with deathcore bands. It was just kind of a little more random, like you'd meet someone on MySpace and they'd be like, well, I
You
can
should
book
know this
6 shows
person.
for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And then
So
another
it'd be like,
band would be like, "Oh, you're so great. You should know this person." And it's just,
yeah, and it's like, oh, they'll book the shows up here, but then this guy can book the shows down there. It was much more kind of independent and just kind of patchwork to put together a tour. Um, but yeah, I mean, you guys were around back then too, so And then so we worked together back in that period, and then we kind of just went separate ways. Nothing negative, it just sort of happened. And then some years passed, and we end up working together again. And so he's been our agent since 2014. He's awesome, great dude. Always just I don't know, he just always puts our needs, our wants, and our goals first. I don't have one negative thing to say about him, which, if you know me, generally I can be negative towards the music industry, because there are a lot of people in the music industry that are hacks. 100%, they are hacks, straight up. I no punches pulled. But there are good dudes out there, and JJ, our agent, is one of them. Um, okay, so we have a fantastic agent, and then I'm kind of at the wheel for management, just because that's sort of what happened. And so really it's him and I working together to try to put together great bills. And when I try to put together a tour package, the first thing I think about is the fan,
mm,
because one, we wouldn't be anywhere without them. I know a lot of bands say that, and a lot of bands kind of try to throw that bone out there, but man, we would be nowhere without the people that support us. And so I value them. I value their opinion. I value the effort they make to come to a concert, the money they have to spend to come to a concert. I was a fan for a very long time before I was a touring musician, where I would go to a show and buy my ticket and do everything that a fan does. And it being a good bill, it being priced right, all that stuff is very important to giving the fan an experience. And not only giving them an experience, but letting them know, hey, thank you for caring about us. We're going to do our best to bring you a great night, and of bands you love at a good price, and have a good time. And so I really try to put my, glasses on of like, okay, I'm a fan. I got $20. Who do I want to see?
mm.
And that's how I put a tour together. And I think this great mix of death metal and deathcore on this tour in particular, it really resonated with the audience. which is awesome. It's when you put together a tour package, sometimes it can be hit or miss or lukewarm or a huge hit. You kind of don't know, right? There's a lot of factors involved. Who else is out on the road? What's the sort of economic situation at the time? Um, how many other tours are out there? All that stuff. But we kind of nailed it this one, and not to give credit to myself, but to give credit to all the bands on the lineup. I think every band on the lineup not only is a little bit different as far as each band is their own thing, but when you put them all together, it's just a brutal, awesome night of metal. There's not one skippable band on the bill, not one.
True.
And I think you can kind of, everyone has their little subgenre of extreme metal that they like. And I feel like the tour kind of addresses almost all of it, you know? So I'm super happy with the lineup. We worked very hard on it, and it's very important for us to put together a tour that fans go, man, this is awesome. This is a great lineup. I
I'm
had a
not
great
gonna miss
time.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's we're live entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's entertainment is about giving the audience what they want and them going, man, this is great. Hell yeah, I'm gonna go to that show. And that's my goal every time we put together a tour.
I hung out with Heavy Hitter Austin from Heavy Hitter, and he had a great story, and he's so grateful. And he said Scott's a stand-up guy because you commented on one of their posts about someone stating who should we tour with, or someone had said, we're touring, and they were like, you should tour with Carnifex. And then Austin tagged you, and they were like, okay, let's make it happen. And then here you are 13 to 15 months later, and it's happening, and he's freaking out. So it's super cool that the internet brought us that.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of always been like that. I don't want to out the band because they're actually good friends of mine, but I remember early on in our career, I think it was 2008 or 2009, we were supporting another band as an opener, and that headliner sort of came to us, just talking, not really like asking us for an advice or an opinion, and they were like, hey, we got this direct support offer to support Suicide Silence. And 2008, like,
They were
Suicide was king,
huge.
Yeah. And it was like, in my mind, as the opener, I'm like, damn, man, you guys are so lucky.
Do it.
Like,
Yeah.
how can I do that? But they were actually very negative about it. And they were almost like trying to kind of act like it was like offensive. Like, how could you ask us to support you?
Mm-hmm.
And as a younger, granted that band had been in the game for obviously, much, much longer than Suicide had. So I guess I could get how, you can kind of be like, well, look at the years on the road or whatever, which, I appreciate legacy and I understand that. But at the same time, it's really all about what's happening right now. What happened 10 years ago or 5 years ago, that's a cool memory, but it's not now. And I have this saying, there's no perfect tour, there's only the next tour. Because that's kind of what this business is. You could do, quote unquote, the perfect tour. Okay, picture your perfect tour. You supported whoever. Metallica, Pantera, Slipknot, Parkway Drive, Black Dahlia Murder, Carcass, whatever. Pick your band. You just did the perfect tour. Okay, great. Now what?
Yeah.
You still have to go out on the road.
You can't just retire after that. I'm definitely calling the
Exactly.
episode the next tour with Scotty and
Right.
Lewis. But
Exactly, right. You can't. Okay, great. That was your spring tour. Cool. What are you doing summer?
next, yeah.
Oh, exactly. And so that was kind of the beginning of my education of understanding, like, you can't live and die on sort of every single tour is somehow going to make or break your career. That's not the case, because we've done absolutely amazing freaking tours, man, where, interesting dichotomy. I know I'm going off on a tangent here,
No,
but
no, go for it.
we supported Parkway Drive out in Europe,
That's
and
huge.
it was huge. The tour was doing 5,000 to 7,000 tickets a night.
Huge.
This was back in 2014. There was a Slayer tour going on around the same time. I think it was the Repentless tour, right in there, if my
That
memory
makes
is
sense.
serving.
Yeah.
The Parkway tour was doing better than the Slayer tour, and we were playing the same places, indoor soccer arenas, kind of like miniature arenas,
Hmm.
um, huge. And then so right, the perfect tour, right? Playing in front of 5,000 to 7,000 people a night, every night for a month. Congrats, you did it, amazing. Our tour right after that, we were supporting Darkest Hour, who I like, great dudes,
Yeah,
but
Mike's
the
awesome.
tour
Yeah.
did the tour did not do well, you
Mm.
know. 2014, they were kind of in that odd transitional period. They'd just gotten off Victory. It was kind of, bands have peaks and valleys, and they were in a little bit of a valley, and we were supporting them, and it kind of was, it really drove home that concept that I sort of learned a few years earlier, which is, yeah, you did an amazing tour. Now what?
Hmm.
Okay, now we're on a tour that's only doing like 300 or 400 people a night. Okay. And there's still the next tour. And that's when I really sort of, you know, learned by way of experience, like, there's no perfect tour. You can have a great tour and you can have a just okay tour. None of that, it doesn't matter where on the scale it was. You still gotta go out again in the next season. So what are you doing? Um, anyway, that was my very long-winded way of kind of giving some insight into kind of how I formed this view on not only taking out young bands like Heavy Hitter, but you can go way back to 2014 when we took out Lorna Shore on their first tour. Or back in 2008 when we took out Chelsea Grin, when they had Alex, way back in the day, or 2010 when we took out Oceano. It was like I kind of learned early on that if you have this attitude of like, we started before you, so somehow we're superior. From that band that we toured with in '08, that was like very dismissive of suicide, and it was like, dude, if you had supported them, that would have been freaking huge for you guys. Like, you guys would have crushed it.
Hmm.
That was it. Really, I put all that together and really learned that, like, if you have a negative attitude towards the younger generation or the bands that started a few years after you, it really doesn't do anything good. It doesn't do anything good. And you never know. Like, look at Lorna, man. Like, yes, we took them out on their first tour, but now, dude, I'd be lucky and happy for them to take us out on a tour. So you never know where this crazy business of peaks and valleys is going to take you. I mean, I can think back to 2016 when we were out with Slaughter to Prevail and Slaughter to Prevail was supporting. And now, oh, hell yeah, I would go support Slaughter to Prevail 100%. I would be happy to support those guys. And that's the nature of this game, is every band is on its own trajectory. You never know where you're going to end up, and you never know where your colleagues are going to end up. And so the idea that a band started a few years after you, so somehow they're unworthy, that notion was dismissed a very long time ago for me, because I saw it play out on other tours with other bands, and it didn't work out so well.
It didn't work out so for that band that said no to suicide. Yeah.
Did not. They are not active anymore.
Exactly. These are wise
You know,
words, and I appreciate the insightful knowledge coming. And it's good that you got it so long ago, and that you have embraced that. And it's true that it's this peaks and valleys, and it's just good to just be, first off, a nice person to everyone, because you never know
Yep.
where anyone on your bill is going to end up one day.
No,
And the reciprocation of you taking them out might work back as into them taking you out into much bigger rooms and a bigger tour for the next tour.
100%. And I have to give credit where credit's due. We've toured with a lot of big bands, thankfully. We've been honored to go out with a lot of big bands. Now, some of those big bands, the dudes in the bands are very nice. And some of those big bands, the dudes in the band are not as nice. And I'll say this, kind of going back to the Parkway Drive guys, not to glaze them too much, but we're on that tour with those dudes. Man, I can only dream about what it feels like to sell 5,000 to 7,000 tickets a night.
Huge. Yeah.
I mean, the guys are making like 6 figures a night. Like they made it. They freaking made it. Check this out. We would be in our green room. We already played. Our show's done. The Parkway dudes are in the hall walking to the stage. Winston, the vocalist. So the king, this is the alpha on the tour, right? The vocalist for the headlining band, that's the dude running the show.
Mm.
He would open our door to our green room, pop his head in and say, "Hey dudes, we have a whole bunch of catering left over in our room. Go rate it. Take whatever you guys want. I don't even care. I hope you had a great show. See you when we're done."
Thank you for being here. Yeah.
And they would go on stage and play for an hour and absolutely obliterate the audience. But they would stop to say, "Hey, we got extra food, drinks, snacks. Our room's your room. Take whatever you want." And as a touring band, as a touring artist, your little green room is all you have. That's all you have.
It's your little
and your rider, your few snacks. That's
precious,
it. That's all you get.
My precious, yeah.
Right. And so far, we go so far as that we have a saying. We have a saying for people that come in and raid the rider. We call them rider spiders.
Oh, I like that.
And so, like, if you have guest list or whatever, and all of a sudden you're just like, "Yo, what happened to all the beers? What happened to all the chips?
The rider spiders got them. Yeah.
Didn't we have pretzels? What the hell?" Rider spiders, dude, because you get cleaned out every night.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys were just giving it away. Okay, I took those lessons. I'm like, dang, that's unreal. And then I juxtapose against, we would go out with support another band that, okay, they're doing great. They're going to do 600 to 800 tickets a night, maybe 1,000 in the big shows, which is, that's good work, right? If you can sell 1,000 tickets, you're doing good. But they were so cold and so rude and so far to the point where we got banned from guest lists because one of our friends dared ask to take a photo with
one of the members. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's yeah.
It was me and my buddy. I'm gonna save the names just so nobody's
cool, yeah. Weird.
He's another guy in a band, another successful deathcore band. We're walking down the hall behind this, in the backstage, just going to our room. And the vocalist for the headliner is coming the other way. Like, nobody planned it. We're just in a common space, going through it, doing our thing. And the dude I'm with goes, "Oh man, hey, I'm a huge fan. You guys are sick. Is it cool if I get a selfie?" And the dude was like, "Yeah, for sure." Boom, staff a selfie. That's it. It was like a 30-second interaction.
Next day, they're like, "You can't have any guests backstage."
Not even the next day, my friend. So we didn't have a TM on this tour because we were supporting, and this is 10 years ago, a long time ago. I go that night, show's over. Okay, I got to go collect the guarantee for our band. I go to the production office where the TM is, and hey, what's up? Just getting the guarantee. And he's just like straight face, and he's just like, "Shut the door, have a seat." I'm like, okay, what's going on? What's up? And he's like, "So your guests are harassing my band?"
Oh my God.
I don't know what you're talking about. What happened? And he tells me, I'm like, okay, I guess. And he goes, "You guys are banned from guest list." They banned us from guest list.
No, yeah.
Now our label came in and was like, "Hey, the band's
we have press and stuff.
I know, they're just like, the head of the label's gonna come to the show, okay?
Unbelievable.
So it's gonna happen. But
Don't be like that, people. Be nice to your supporting bands. If you are in a headlining band, be nice to the supporting bands, and if you're in a supporting band, be respectful and don't be a spider riders. Rider
right,
spiders.
yeah. It's just you meet so many people when you're out on the road of all type. Literally, you meet everybody. And to see the difference between guys that literally could call every shot they want, and everyone would be like, "Yeah, come on, dude, they're selling 7,000 tickets. Like, you better do what they say." And versus the people that are trying to ban us because of a photo, I just take all that in context and go, we're just like a working class band. We do okay. We're not the biggest, we're not the smallest. We're just out here trying to make a living. There's no reason to be a rock star. There's no reason to look down on anybody. We're all just trying to do it. So just, be glad there's other people doing it.
Hell, yes. I can tell we're gonna get along. We're gonna have a great, great month. I'm happy that we've done this. Hopefully, I have one last question. It's the classic
Oh, yeah,
Vox and
bring it
Hops
on. I got
wrap up
time.
question. It's the classic wrap up question. Hopefully it happens, maybe once or twice on the tour, but not more than that. When we have the days off, the next day, maybe we can indulge in what we're about to discuss because you'll have far too many margaritas with Cryptopsy and me. What is your hangover cure?
All right, I'm gonna out myself as a real lightweight here. I haven't had a hangover.
Oh, see, that's because you're smart.
I
Maybe
just
maybe the 16 years of sobriety built
I
you
I'm
up.
not yeah, I'm not like a heavy drinker. In fact, I think in my whole life I've probably only been drunk twice,
Smart, yes.
and one of them was on accident. So it was early on when like I started drinking again, and I didn't realize like you got to wait like 20-30 minutes and then it sort of
Oh
hits
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I thought it was like, instantaneous. I'm like, well, I don't feel it yet.
I'll have a few more shots.
Sure. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, what happened?
What day is it? How many? What do you mean it's Wednesday? Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I guess I'm an amateur drinker. I didn't drink for so long that, you know, one or two drinks to me, I'm just like, we're really partying, guys, aren't we?
Good, good. See, that's smart.
So that's kind of my I guess that's my 16 years of straight edge still showing.
That's good. No hangover. No hangover is a good hangover. It's the best kind of hangover.
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain for like a hangover, and it's like I can't really think of one, to be honest with you. I get more of a headache from drinking too much coffee in the morning without eating.
That happens. Yeah, totally. That caffeine rush of just
Coffee gets me
shakiness.
more than
The coffee in the States is insanely strong too.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, the
Just insane.
Dunkin'.
I noticed it on the last tour that
Oh
I'd
man,
have an iced coffee in the morning. I'd be like, holy crap, I'm
the
shaking.
Dunkin' Donuts coffee is like turned up to 11.
Insane, insane.
It's almost too much.
Let's wrap this up with just you one last time. You got 1 minute. Give the pitch to everyone listening why they should be coming to the Necromanteum Tour Part II from Scott Ian Lewis from Carnifex. Why should they be coming to this tour?
Okay, I'll start it with the support. Okay, so heavy hitter, check out heavy hitter. I mean, music is basically free. Go on YouTube if you have Spotify, if you have Apple, whatever. Check them out. They're sick. They're kind of like a old school, almost like a MySpace deathcore. And
True.
I don't say that in a negative way, but just it's like straight up beat down,
They're gonna punch you in
heavy
the face. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
deathcore. Yeah, like no operatic stuff, no
No way.
strings,
Yeah.
just guitars, blast beats, and brutal vocals, and cool dudes. Okay, so that's heavy hitter, dude. Organectomy? Are you kidding me? Though I feel like Organectomy was like one of the kind of original hype slam bands that kind of came out. I mean, what, almost 10 years ago now? Now I know slam is like a whole thing now. Everybody embraces it, accepts it, and knows it. But 2013,
Back in the
14,
day. Yeah,
15,
yeah.
yeah, it was still very kind of new and everybody was all about gent, and it was like the opposite of gent, but it's sick. Organectomy is brutal. It's basically like deathcore on steroids.
True.
Okay, mental cruelty. I think mental cruelty are an amazing example of what modern deathcore is, where you have obvious musicianship, very talented dudes. They're putting their melody and their kind of musical education and ability on display. At the same time, you're still going to get very brutal, very primitive aspects, and I think they blend them nicely. And an insane vocalist. The dude's
So
awesome.
good. Yeah.
So
And the
good.
clean vocals are awesome too from the guitarist there.
It kind of has everything. In a weird way, it kind of has everything. Okay, Cryptopsy, give me a break.
You can skip over Cryptopsy.
Negative. That's definitely Cryptopsy. I've been a fan of Cryptopsy, got to be almost 20 years now.
Nice.
And I always revered Canadian death metal. Always. Back to our early days when some of the first bands that believed in us were Canadian bands. Despise Icon, Beneath the Massacre, Ion Dissonance, Neuraxis, The Plasma Rifle. But some bands that aren't even around anymore. These were all bands that 07, 08, 09, we played shows with these guys. They were super cool to us. And one thing I always appreciated about the Canadian death metal or Canadian deathcore, kind of the scenes blended, was how much more talented you guys were, right? It was like you could be brutal, you could be fast and nasty, which, we could do down in the States, but then you had this like almost like classic musicianship and this grounded,
healthy sense of competition.
and
That's where it comes
like
from.
learning. It was
Yeah.
learning.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I felt like it was almost like a more sophisticated version of kind of like American death metal, which is kind of raw and a little rough, and maybe some of those guys didn't know music theory,
And we're in the land of Voivod. Come on.
Right, dude. I mean, there's so many great bands that came out of Canada. What was that one? You remember that band Augury?
Oh, hell yeah. Pat's awesome.
I still put their records
Yeah,
on.
he's awesome. That guitarist, vocalist there is the nicest dude ever.
I have never met those dudes. I've never
Yeah.
played with those dudes, but I've always appreciated their talent.
Hell yeah. Vox&Hops episode number 8 or 6. I can't remember. Yeah.
I'll have to check that out because that's a
it's
band
awesome.
that I was always just like, how are you so good?
It's
You know what I
he's
mean?
a very special individual.
And then obviously the Despise guys, though, they've been such a huge influence to us because by my sort of perspective, Despise Icon was the first deathcore band.
I agree with that, but I'm biased being from Montreal.
I don't know. Okay, maybe you're biased, but I think it's the truth. Because I don't know who else is out there, man. Who else? Look at Consumed by Your Poison. That record to me, if it came out today by like a young band that was on TikTok, what are you talking about? They're gonna blow up.
It's true.
There is absolutely nothing about Consumed by Your Poison that is dated or old, or it's as relevant as it is now as it was in 2002, 22 years ago.
I'm going to Masorum tomorrow, which is where Alex works. I'll tell him.
Oh, dude, Alex and I talk all the time. He's a mentor. He's someone I've looked up to since we first toured together in 2007. And that's another band, kind of like Parkway. We would come up to Canada with them, and dude, we play Metropolis. They'd sell I don't know, 2,000 tickets, 1,800 tickets, however big the room is.
23, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, 23 in 2008.
Crazy.
That's like 5,000 now.
It's true.
Okay, and man, I cannot tell you. I can't think of a single negative thing to say about any of them ever. Every single one of them, Grind, Jaren, Alex, Steve, everybody was always so kind. I can't think of a single negative interaction ever. And same for Beneath the Massacre.
Oh, I love them. Yeah.
Dude, Mechanics of Dysfunction, are you kidding?
Yeah.
That to this day, that record will still lay down the hammer on anything.
I have to listen to it like one track at a time. If not, my brain doesn't listen to it anymore.
Dude, that record is I don't know how they wrote a record that gnarly in 2007, 6?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even make sense. It's music that would crush today, 20 years later.
Come back.
How?
Come back.
How?
We need the Bradleys, and we need Elliot back. We need them back.
God, dude, Elliot. I freaking love Elliot, dude. I really do. And that's the thing. I think I have so many great memories with Canadian death metal and deathcore bands. And it was so formative to not only the deathcore scene, but our little journey within it, that it's like, brother from another mother. It's like, I know SoCal and Montreal are very different.
Couldn't be farther apart.
But opposites attract or something.
Yeah, totally. Whenever I'm on tour and I'm in like San Diego or LA or anything, I'm like, I'm as far away from home that I'll be this whole tour. Right. But there's a vibe that fits. Cattle and Cryptopsy makes sense too, Ollie's in both bands, basically.
That's a good tour.
Basically in both bands. Yeah, come on, Travis. I think it's a good tour. And Ollie can play 2 sets. Come on.
Think about this. If you just think about a Montreal San Diego mashup, or SoCal, right? Because we got to get like Faceless in there.
Oh yeah.
Or As Blood Runs Black. But just imagine Despised, Beneath, Cryptopsy, Faceless, Carnifex, Cattle, As Blood Runs Black.
Take that.
I mean, let's go. That's like a whole thing.
It's a whole new thing. We can rival Chaos and Carnage. Let's go. Summer Slaughter, are you listening?
Bigger. I mean, dude, if somehow some magician got all those bands on one tour, it's like Deathcore Hall of Fame.
Scott, this is amazing. This is what it's going to be. People are basically a fly on the wall of what it's going to be for our month on tour, the Necromanteum Tour. We're going to keep hanging out, but not with people listening. This is amazing. I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you for taking the time. Everyone, grab your tickets. Scott listed all the reasons. And then he didn't mention that Carnifex is headlining, and they're going to rip your faces off. It's going to be awesome.
We're playing too, apparently.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you. Massive cheers.
Hey, cheers, brother.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right today. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an awesome conversation. As I mentioned, I had barely spoken to Scott before we had this Zoom call, this interview. I'm really glad that I did have a chance to connect with him because we are going to live on a bus together. That's right, the Necromanteum Part II tour is starting next week, and we're going to live together for an entire month. So what a better way to get to know someone. And I feel, as I just mentioned, that we're going to get along very well. We're going to have lots of fun. I'm very, very excited to tour the United States and Canada with Scott and the rest of the Carnifex peeps. Come out and hang out. The Necromanteum Part II tour is coming up. You should grab your tickets. Do it. Go to voxandhops.com/Carnifex. It's just going to be a blast. Massive cheers to you, Scott. Can't wait to hang out with you really soon, bud. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound, Talent Media, and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope that you have a killer rest of the week. I will be back with another episode on Thursday. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.